The fire blazed brightly and everything looked comfortable in the nice cosy room. Tommy sat by the fire, still holding the book he had been reading. His mother was sitting at the table at her work. The old tabby cat purred away in front of the fender. The kettle was singing on the hob and the old clock ticking away in the corner. What a picture of warmth and comfort it was. Outside all was very different. It had been snowing nearly the whole day, but the snow had turned into sleet and rain which kept beating at the windows as though it wanted to get inside. As Tommy listened to it, he thought how cold it must be outside. This thought led to another which he soon put into words. "Mother," he said, "when shall I have my new overcoat? You know you promised me I should have one this winter." There was a look of trouble on his mother's face as she replied, "I'm afraid, Tommy dear, I shall not be able to get you a new coat this winter. Certainly not right now. I'm very sorry. I did hope to do so, but you know things have not turned out as I expected and—" Tommy interrupted her with a burst of impatience. "I never have anything like other boys." Tommy, said his mother in a gentle, half-reproving tone, "you know that you have all that a kind mother can possibly get for you. And you know how delighted I should be for you to have a new coat if I could possibly afford one. But I see no chance of it at present." "I wonder why God lets us be so poor," exclaimed Tommy in the same fretful way. "Look at Cousin Robbie and Willie Thompson and what?" asked his mother. "They always get new coats when they want them," pouted Tommy. "If they do, I'm sure they ought to be very thankful," said his mother. "But think, Tommy, of the many in the streets who in this bitter weather have scarcely any clothes to cover them, and scarcely any food to eat. Poor boys who have no home to shelter them, but who will have to pass the night upon some cold stone step or in some empty cart. Think of them, Tommy, and thank God that you have a comfortable home with plenty to eat and drink, and clothes which are nice and warm, if they're not very fine. Besides," she added cheerfully, "I'm going to get to work upon your old coat tomorrow, and put some new buttons on it and new binding, and I shall brighten it up so, and make it look so much like a new one that you will hardly know it again. There, give me a kiss and go to bed. You are tired and out of sorts." Tommy was very much out of sorts. He gave his mother a forced kiss and went grumbling to bed. His mother was very sad. She had had a hard struggle since their father died to keep Tommy and his little sister Lucy in comfort. She had worked cheerfully and lovingly and never murmured at her poverty. But Tommy's grumbling grieved and distressed her, and her tears fell upon her work as she thought how hard it was to be poor. Soon after Tommy went to bed, he fell asleep, but he roused again by and by. He heard his mother locking the doors below and coming upstairs. She entered his room, tucked the bedclothes up comfortably, and kissed him. Tommy half opened his sleepy eyes and said, "Good night, Mother." He heard her go out and open and shut her own door. He wondered whether he had distressed her much by his grumbling, and thought he had, and felt uneasy and troubled about it. He listened to the rain as it pattered against his window and to the wind moaning in the chimney, and thought of the poor homeless boys his mother spoke of. He heard the old clock downstairs strike one, and the policeman's slow, heavy step pass under his window, and then he dropped off to sleep again. By and by he thought he heard his door open. He looked out from under the bedclothes to see what it was. The light from a policeman's lantern dazzled his sleepy eyes, and the policeman himself, tall and looking very severe, stood beside his bed. Tommy was terribly frightened. He would have popped his head under the bedclothes again, but the big policeman's gruff voice stopped him. "Little grumbler," he said, "discontented, unthankful boy, get up and come along with me." "Where to, sir?" Tommy timidly asked. "Out into the street," said the policeman, "to see how it fares with the poor boys who have no warm beds, no comfortable homes, and no kind mother to take care of them." The thought of turning out of his warm bed into the streets on such a night made Tommy shudder. "But it's so cold," he pleaded. "I know it is," said the policeman. "Bitterly cold. Come along." Tommy felt that it was of no use trying to resist the stern policeman, and so he crept shivering out of bed. "Put on your things," said the policeman. Tommy did so. "Where are your boots?" "I left them downstairs," replied Tommy, "and the door's locked and Mother's got the key and we can't get in there." How glad he was of an excuse for not going out. But the policeman was not to be moved. "Never mind," he said. "If you or the boys in the streets have anything on their feet, you'll be no worse off than they are. Come along." "But I haven't got my overcoat and comforter nor my cap," urged Tommy, with a discontented whine. The policeman looked more severe than ever. "Overcoat? Comforter?" he said. "You have a nice warm jacket now. Why, the boys you will see have scarcely a bit of anything to cover them." And with that he laid hold of Tommy's arm and led him, too frightened to cry out, down the stairs, out of the door, into the street. How dreadfully cold it was, to be sure. As Tommy stepped out upon the half-frozen snow, he shuddered and shivered from head to foot. The rain and sleet beat about his head and face until his nose and ears tingled again, and his eyes were almost blinded. The wind seemed as though it would freeze his very blood. But the terrible policeman dragged him on through rain and sleet and wind and snow until they came to a stable yard where an empty covered wagon was put up for the night. The policeman turned the light of his lantern into it, and there, crouching and shivering in one corner, was what looked like a bundle of rags with 2 or 3 little naked feet peeping out from underneath, and 2 thin pale voices looking out from above. "Hello," said the policeman. "What are you doing here?" A weak little voice replied, "Please, sir, we ain't doing no harm to nobody." "Is that you, Bobby?" asked the policeman. "Yes, sir, me and Billy." "Well," said the policeman, and Tommy noticed that his voice was kinder and more gentle, "mind you don't make a noise and you can stay here all night." And the little voice said, "Thank you, sir." "And take this little chap with you," said the policeman as he lifted Tommy into the wagon, "and keep him here till I come back." And he turned away and left the yard. How glad Tommy was to creep into the corner with the other boys, away from the cutting wind. His toes and fingers were numbed with the cold, his teeth chattered, his clothes were dripping, his hair was soaked and matted, and the cold drops trickled down his neck. Poor Tommy! He could hold up no longer, but giving way to his wretchedness, he burst into a fit of crying. "What's the matter?" asked Bobby. "Oh, it's so cold," sobbed Tommy. "It's a shame, it's wicked to bring me out of my warm bed on such a night as this." "Cold?" said Bobby. "Do you call this cold? How'd you like to be a-sitting on a stone step with nothing to keep the wind out, and the rain and snow are falling atop you all the time? That's cold, but this is comfortable to it." Poor little fellow, he shivered and trembled in spite of his brave words. "But we can't sleep here often," said Billy. "The police drives us away, excepting that one has brought you here. He's a good un, he is." Tommy went on crying, but less and less as he thought of what they said. Presently Bobby spoke again. "Perhaps you're hungry, little un?" "No, I'm not hungry," said Tommy. "I'm only cold and miserable." "I wish I was only cold," said Bobby. "I ain't had nothing to eat since this morning, and I shouldn't have had nothing at all, only a little chap a-going to school with a slice of bread and butter in his hand, seen me looking hungry, I suppose, and so he gave it to me. He was a kind little fellow, wasn't he?" "I ain't had nothing but a penny worth of soup," said Billy. "A gentleman gave me a penny for holding his horse, and I got some soup. I ain't had nothing else." The talk ended here. Tommy had left off crying. He felt ashamed of himself as he heard what these poor boys said. He thought of all his comforts, and of the miserable lives they must lead, to have no better place to sleep in than a wretched wagon, and nothing to eat for a whole day but a slice of bread and butter or a basin of soup. Bobby and Billy had dropped off to sleep. The wind seemed to blow into the wagon colder and colder as the night went on. But Tommy's discontent and grumbling were over now, and the more cold he felt, the more he pitied his miserable companions. Poor little fellows, how they shivered and moaned in their sleep. Tommy wished he had his old coat to spread over them. Ah, he thought, Mother was right. It is a warm and comfortable coat, although it's not very fine. And he shed many bitter tears as he remembered his unthankfulness and discontent. But when the policeman comes, he thought, I'll ask him to take these poor boys home with us. Mother will give them a good breakfast, I know. And so he went on, thinking and shivering and thinking, until at last he heard the policeman's footsteps coming up the yard. Presently the light of the lantern shone into the wagon, and a voice called, Get up, Tommy, it's getting so late. Tommy jumped up, wondering how the policeman's voice could sound like that. And then everything changed. The cold, hard boards of the wagon turned into soft, warm pillows. The light of the policeman's lantern spread out into the light of day, and instead of the tall, stern policeman, there was only his little sister Lucy laughing beside his bed in his own little room at home. Tommy rubbed his eyes. Why, he said, have I been dreaming? Where are Bobby and Billy? Lucy burst out into a merry laugh and ran downstairs. Tommy got out of bed, and kneeling down he said his morning prayer, adding at the close of it, And, O Lord, let me never be a little grumbler again, but a cheerful, contented and thankful boy.